Folks are going to keep joining here as we pass the top of the hour, but we're going to go ahead and get started with just some soft introductions. I want to introduce everybody to my friend here, Kade Wilcox. But before I do, I just want to talk about the sessions that we're having and the one we're having today and why. This is currently and officially Thursdays at 3. And these are fun sessions. These were created, frankly, as an inspiration because of all the time that I spent when I was a CEO at Vance Thompson Vision, calling other practices. Some of those mentors and friends are on this line for help on how to implement some of this new technology. We were hard to get to. We didn't necessarily always have the best industry support. And it felt like we were having to recreate the wheel anytime an innovation came out. We have kind of a saying in South Dakota that, no one's coming for you. You kind of have to figure out how to be self-sustaining. And while that's a great way to learn, it doesn't mean that everybody who follows you has to learn that way. And it's good to have people share some of the ways that they do things. So today is just a kind of a weekly gift back to all of you, folks who might want to join or learn. It's tips and tricks of what I've learned over the years of being an administrator, 20 years of being also a marketing professional and helping practices implement new technologies. The most recent of which is a practice I've been working with just for a few months, who has gone from 12% premium adoption to 28.8% with a goal of 30. That's real revenue over, 4,000 cases a year. I'm happy to say that they were an attendee at last year's BRICS course put on by the ASOA and ASCRX. BRICS stands for Business of Refractive and Cataract Surgery. Some of our faculty and chair people are on this call, Katie Barkey and others. So if you haven't planned on attending that the first weekend in October, do so. We'll have a QR code here at the end. So that's why we're having these sessions. We try to hold our conversation to 20 or 25 minutes in total. It'll be candid and back and forth with Kate and I. And then we'll open it up to all of you for your feedback and questions to help drive the discussion. We usually end in about 45 minutes, but we can take the whole hour if you'd like. And we're committed to doing it every single week. With that, I just want to introduce my friend, Kade Wilcox. We met officially in Chicago at Academy last year, less than a year ago, Cade. And right away, there was a word that Cade used that really got my attention, and it was joyful persistence. And I've always, being a marketing type, but also being somebody who ran a practice, I was always worried and self-conscious about how many opportunities we were creating by marketing, but then a little self-conscious about how well we were doing at getting to them, and never really knowing the answer. We went from kind of having a shoebox full of leads to a bona fide Excel spreadsheet to some version of makeshift CRM before those existed. And I just knew that there was always some fall off with our effectiveness. And Kate has helped us measure that, with some of the practices we work with. Myself and the companies that I work with, MJM and otherwise, we don't have any kind of vested interest or financial interest in um, uh, in Kate's company, Boost Patients, but we do have an interest in practices doing well with the opportunities that are being afforded them, and especially right now, because when markets are down, it seems like we're willing to cut costs at the practice and not follow up on the revenue opportunities that are coming our way, both with marketing and then with follow up. I'm really glad to have you on this call, Kate, to walk us through why it's so important to just do the basics, picking up the phone. Um, just my last little comment here before handing the microphone over to you is at a session that we had to kick off Askers this last year for industry, for doctors, and for practice managers was called Sightline. And one of the people asked me on a panel, what's the most innovative thing that practices are needing to innovate in the next 12 months? And my answer was I held up the phone. Like, Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, we can talk about better refractive outcomes, but we're leaving a lot on the table by just being really bad at customer service still. And so that's what we're talking about, picking up the phone today. And Kate, I'm eager to hear some of the things that you've shared. I've seen some data slides from you before, but I know you're going to walk us through some of your recent findings and a little bit about what Boost Patient does and why it's so important. So without further ado, let's learn a little bit more about you and Boost. Cade, first of all, you care to defend yourself with any of the things I mentioned?
Not yet, not yet, but I am ready to defend.
Okay.
First of all, thanks for having me. You've been a really great friend. I've learned a lot from you, and honestly enjoy more of our kind of personal life conversations than work conversations. So, been really fun to get to know you. Really grateful that you guys are all here. I'm Kade Wilcox and CEO at Boost, and we really kind of just obsess over one thing, and that's new patient follow-up. So we started in 2018, and from that point till today, we only do one thing. We obsess over new patient follow-up. And we've had several iterations of our product in terms of how we follow up with new patients, but we are not a marketing agency. We do not generate leads. We will never generate leads. Our obsession, our passion, what we really love working with our practices on is following up with new patient leads. And so I love sharing kind of about what we do and how we do it. But my real goal, and it always has been, is that if a practice can do these things on their own, they should. Now, obviously, we're happy to help you do that. We work with about 75 practices right now. 45 of those are in ophthalmology. The other 30 are across bariatrics, dental, and orthodontics, with a few outliers in there. And so my goal today isn't so much to push Boost patients on you, although I'm happy to have those conversations with you separately. My real goal is just to show you what we see in not only our 75 practices in total, but also what we've learned through almost 700 mystery shops just in ophthalmology up to this point. So I hope that's, clear in terms of my goal is just to be helpful, not
Hey, Cade,
necessarily.
real quick, just
Sure.
because, this is going to be a casual conversation and everybody should feel confident just interrupting or jumping in if you want. Plus, we'll open up for questions at the end. But if you'll go back one slide, and this is likely because where I'm sitting right now, it's 10 o'clock p.m. I'm at the European Society of Cataract and Refractive Surgery right now, and I'm a little punchy. But did you have to do a little Photoshop with your left tricep there? Because
No, that
it's
actually
bonkers.
they actually photoshopped the hair. I actually have less hair than that. But the tricep is real. That's real.
It's
That's actually
from picking up
real.
the phone. I like it.
I should have known that was not going to be a serious comment. I thought, man, did I miss something already? Nope. He
No.
just wanted to make fun of me. All right. Well, thank you for that. So here's one of the most common things that we hear in almost every conversation we have in terms of sales calls. And I think most of you have probably engaged this question in the past is like, do we have a marketing problem? We have the benefit, since we're not a marketing agency and we have 75 customers, 45 in ophthalmology, to work with really kind of dozens of marketing agencies because we don't drive leads. And one of the most common things that they share with us is that all of their practices feel like marketing is broken. Anytime surgery volume goes down, the assumption is, oh, it must be marketing. We're not getting enough leads. We're not getting the right leads, things of that nature. And the reality is that might be true. I share with practices like, well, maybe, maybe not. If you think you have a problem, deep dive, audit your marketing and figure it out, which is easy to do. But it's also likely that you actually don't have a marketing problem. You have a follow-up problem. And I'm going to show you the data on our 700, just under 700 mystery shops here in a moment. It's our belief that you don't really have a marketing problem, you have a follow-up problem. And we're going to kind of walk through that. So here's how most practices respond to a new patient lead. A new patient lead comes in and they might get an automated email. It's certainly not personalized most of the time. And they might get a phone call or two. And that is really the extent to what a practice goes through when it comes to nurturing a new patient lead. Now, keep in mind, I'm referring to digital leads. So Boost does two things, both related to the new patient. We follow up with digital leads for practices. And then we have about 20 practices roughly that we take their inbound calls as well. Meaning when a new patient calls the practice, they don't get the practice, they get Boost. We answer their questions, we book their consult. What I'm showing you is all related to the digital lead follow-up. So most practices, a lead comes in, self-test, contact us form, PPC ad, meta ad. They come in and a practice might reach out with an automated email, maybe a phone call. And and I'm happy to send you all this in granular detail. It's actually kind of fun to geek out on. But out of the roughly, we haven't updated the data here. So at this point, this was when I did the summer meeting at ACOS, we were roughly around 550. Now it's up to 700. So 53% of those practices that we mystery shop did no follow-up at all. And just to give you some insight into what we're actually mystery shopping, and we'll also do it to your practice if you'd like us to. We mystery shop you and then we send you the report. We screenshot everything so you can see the name of the lead, the phone number, the email, the timestamp, all of it. But what we do is we have kind of a hierarchy of forms we're looking for. So we'll look for a Google pay-per-click landing page. This is a high intent lead. This is someone who was searching, saw your ad, clicked on it, filled out the information, high intent lead. Then we'll go to a self-test. If you don't have a landing page for a Google ad, we'll go to a self-test. And then if you don't have self-test, we'll go to a contact us form. If you have two of those three things, we'll actually test two of those three forms. And then we report on it. So that's what the mystery shop looks like. Of those clinics that we mystery shop, 53% followed up 0% of the time. So when those clinics say they have a marketing problem, do they have a marketing problem or do they have a follow-up problem? And this is where, to me, it gets really interesting. So none of us on this call would agree that not following up at all is good. But of the 47% who did follow up, how effective do you think they are at following up and booking the consult? And so here's the data from those mystery shops. So there's three things that we're really prioritizing and measuring in the mystery shop. Number one is what we call speed to lead. How quickly did the practice respond? Number two is joyful persistence. How many times did they respond, try to follow up with the patient? And we're only measuring 5 days. We think if you don't get back to a patient within 5 days, you might as well just move on. So we measure 5 days, joyful persistence. And then third, how many different communication channels are they using in order to follow up with the patient? And the reason that matters is every patient wants to be engaged differently. I prefer a text message. My mom, 65, prefers a phone call. And other, whatever form of communication you prefer is how you should engage the patient. So speed to lead, the average response time of those 47% of clinics who followed up with us, it took them a day, 1.7 days, right, to respond. So very long time. Joyful persistence, on average, they only follow up a little over 2 times. So a lead comes in, clinic reaches out on average 2 times. A lot of these are just an automated email. Most of the time, it's at least a phone call. They're only reaching out 2 times, not sufficient. And then lastly, and this is really fascinating, they're only 78% of those only reached out via phone. So no texting, which would be the big missing communication there. And then obviously email is necessary, but texting for sure. And not like chatbot texting, but personalized and conversational type texting. And what I mean by personalized is if the lead came in and they're interested in Evo ICL, then communicate to them that you're aware that they're interested in Evo ICL versus just generic copy and paste. Hey, thanks for coming in. What do you want? When they already said what they want to know the pricing of ICL or RLE or LASIK or whatever.
I want to stop you.
Sure.
I want to stop you right here because between that slide before us and the one you're showing now, you've stratified things across text-based, email-based, phone-based, responses, and the average is like you see here, 2.17. As a no-brainer, I think practices should probably have an auto response, right, for their forms and leads online. But then, what do you say to the practices if you go to the next slide here, who say, well, we don't feel like reaching out to them more than a couple of times is really kind of our style, right? We don't want to harp on them. That's kind of the first question I have with this slide right here.
Yeah, it's probably one of the more common questions asked during the sales process is like, is this too much? So this is a visual representation of the follow-up process for all the clinics that work with Boost. So, Dr. Slade in Houston, Texas, a new lead comes in his practice, and this is the overall cadence of communication they're going to get. They have AI texting running 24/7. They got text messages, which are our agents manually texting an agent. Or the patient. That's the difference between AI and the texting. And then we'll send a couple of emails, and then we'll make up to 4 phone calls all in the first 10 days. So Matt, your question is one of the more commonly asked questions during the sales process is that too much? Is that too aggressive? Do patients get annoyed at all the communication? And there's really kind of a couple of ways to answer it. Number one is it's a good question. I'm not really for sure. Each of our accounts are in a different sub account. So it's not like I can hit a button and run an analysis on, is it too much or too not? That's the first thing I always share with them, just to be transparent with them. Number two, I can say that of the roughly 75 practices we've had, we've never had a single one come back to us and say, hey, it's too much. Please stop. So that's anecdotal. Obviously, it's not data driven, but out of all those clients, we've not had any say, hey, this is too aggressive. And then also we've never had a clinic say, hey, this patient was really kind of complaining about, all the communication we were doing. Do you think we should dial it back? And so I think that the reason most people think that way is because they're used to not getting back to the patient very much at all. And so if your historical way of engaging a new patient lead is only 1 or 2 touch points, well, 20 touch points in the first 10 days is going to feel like a lot. And it is a lot. And this is just if they're unengaged, right? If the patient is unengaged, this is the joyful persistence they're going to get in perpetuity. I mean, what we mean by joyful persistence is we will follow up the patient forever. Unless they unsubscribe from communication or they book a consult, we're going to follow up with them for a long time. At the end of the deck, and I'm happy to send this to you in an email, it's a very quick link. We have a video following up with a new patient lead, 126 days. We followed up with a LASIK, this happened to be a LASIK screening, for 126 days, and they booked the consult. So if you're this practice and you have leads coming in and you're only reaching out once or twice, even if you're a practice that only gets 30 to 50 leads a month, you are leaving revenue on the table because you're only reaching out 1 or 2 times in the first 5 days. So maybe you can't implement a system on your own that does what Boost does, but can you implement a system on your own that reaches out to them 10 times over 15 days or 20 days? And so the net takeaway here for someone who wants to self-implement something like this is figure out a way that your team can use texting, email, and phone and try to reach out to them 10 to 15 times over a 30-day period of time. And you're going to unequivocally book more consults. Your team will convert a few of those into surgeries, and you will increase your surgery volume.
Well, there's a couple things that I want to really highlight with that. First of all, in the pre-digital days, the days when we weren't working leads like we are now, we used to say just on the packets of information that went out, patients would come in and they'd still be kind of clinging to them, and we produced them in a fashion where they didn't want to throw them away. They were nicely done, right? Because it's a few $1,000s per eye, and so we wanted it to sit on their nightstand, and we wanted them to feel bad throwing it away, and we'd see them, come in with it with, a year to a year and a half, postage mark on it. Well, I think the point that you're giving here is that that may not have shifted. They might still be in the consideration phase for a long time. But we now don't have a similar rigor in reaching back out to them, number one. Number two is that I think that we all agree that because of the market conditions and because of maybe where refractive surgery is in its life cycle, and because of the way that the channels that we're using to market those 3 things, the leads don't feel as strong as they once did, right? And so a lot of times I'm asked, well, these don't seem like quality leads. They're maybe a little bit more slippery, and that might be true, but they're still leads that raise their hands. And until they indicate to us that they're not interested, we should be chasing them down for an answer so they can be educated properly about their options. And so I just really think that it's that joyful persistence is a really helpful way to think about it. Because if we think about it as being too salesy, it's easy to get in our own head and feel like, well, I don't know that I would like it that much. But if I was really frustrated with my glasses and I really knew how good life could be afterwards, um, when I was done, I would look back fondly that they didn't let me get through this, fall through the cracks. So I think
Yeah.
those things are really important to hold in balance.
I think there's several threads there's several things you just said. I want to pull on a few of those threads. I think that you talk about kind of the competitive landscape right now, not just like how competitive it is, and they're, they have a lot of options, but also even just their concerns, right? Whether it's around the procedure or cost or whatever it might be. The speed to lead is incredibly important because if someone's kind of trying to educate themselves or they're trying to figure out what they want to do, and one practice answers immediately and one practice takes a couple of days, which practice do you think is going to kind of lead the way? So the speed to lead, you mentioned joyful persistence, but the speed to lead is really, really, really critical. Really, really critical. Second thing on the joyful persistence, and you're spot on. So we work with a large practice, and we sent out a survey to about 2,000 leads that did not, they came in for a consult over, I think it was a 6-month period of time. I'd have to ask Liam, but it was a long time. It was a lot of leads, and they came in a consult but never moved forward. And so we sent out a survey, and unfortunately there was only about 100 people that responded. So not a lot out of 2,000 leads. But basically, all the responses for why they didn't move forward to surgery fell into two buckets. One was pricing questions and concerns, and one was just they were just not ready. They were still learning, trying to educate, et cetera, et cetera. So the beauty about joyful persistence is you're just following up with them to see if those things have changed, right? And so when someone says, "Oh, thanks for answering all my questions. I'm not ready to move forward now," 99% of practices just kind of forget about that lead. That lead was not a bad lead. They're just not ready like today, but they might be ready in 3 months. They might be ready in 6 months. So
That's right.
there's just so many things you get out of the joyful persistence that is just going to grow your surgery volume.
Well, the last thing I want to say on that topic is that there's so much misinformation out there. Not only are the leads more slippery once they raise their hands, but where they can go get information and the validity of that information, it is all over the board, and it's scary. And so whether it's negative reviews online or finding a group on social media that are haters, or just somebody who's, in-law has a roommate from college who had LASIK and went blind, or, whatever horror stories we hear from the old days of LASIK. I think that we can all agree that where we would love the patient to learn about their options is at the practice,
Right.
doctor to patient. That's the most sacred place to learn it. And our doctors always said, and I know I see Melissa on the call, that our marketing is the beginning of informed consent.
Mm.
Right? That they're just getting the phone in the first place is an effort to get them in front of us and is with as little of commitment as possible so we can give them good information and make an educated decision. And so that's why I wanted to camp here for just a second because if we believe that that's true, then we believe it's less salesy and more for the sake of patients making a logical and educated
Yeah.
choice.
It's so good. And just to affirm that point, just to show how right you are. So one of the other advantages of speed to lead is that if you're investing money into digital leads, a good number of those leads are coming in after hours. Your team's not at their desk, they're not at their computer, they're not at their, phone. Those leads are coming in after hours. And I could show you literally thousands of examples of this. So a good deal of your digital leads are coming in after hours. And so being able to respond instantaneously is kind of a unique advantage. But the second thing I wanted to kind of speak about in terms of the 24/7 AI and the texting is that the patients that engage the AI are asking real questions. They're asking what procedural questions. Does LASIK hurt? How much does it cost? How long do I have to stay out of my glasses? I mean, all the questions that they would ask your counselor in a consult, they're typically asking the AI. And I think the reason they're doing that, they're obviously exactly what you're saying is they're looking for information. They're trying to educate themselves. And so not only when you respond instantaneously are you building credibility, not only are you separating yourself from your competitor who's taking 2 days to get back to a lead and who's only following up with them once or twice, you're also providing them instantaneous answers to some of their most commonly asked questions instead of having to submit a contact us form, and wait until someone in the back office has, a chance to send them an email. So it just, what you're saying is extremely right. And we see it in all the text exchanges and the types of questions that they're asking the practices before they're ever willing to come in and book a consult.
Yeah, so important. And what I'm afraid of is that if they are just getting to the phone team at Joe practice, that they are just going to ask the one question that they care most about because it's the one they know the most about to begin with. And what's that? Well, we all know how much $1,000 is, and so they're going to say, well, how much is it?
Mhm.
And and the undereducated phone team member will say, it's $2,500 an eye, and they'll say, okay, thanks. Or they'll say, do you have any other questions? And they'll say, no, thanks. I mean,
Yeah.
but so there's no more engagement.
Mhm.
We will have marked that off as, lead handled. But what a missed opportunity to say, listen, it's $2,500, and that's usually the first question that people ask. But what we've learned over the years is there's a lot more questions you should ask about whether or not you're going to find a quality, practice to do a quality procedure with a quality outcome. So here's some questions we would also encourage you to ask. Well, that's more sophisticated and long-winded than maybe the person at the front desk who's also checking people in can handle at the time. Because now we're engaged in a real conversation. So this is a nice way to set it up. And I like that you talked about the AI piece because I think that while some people can be a little freaked out about that, these learning models have become so solid and reliable that we can get a lot of the, call it 85% of the basic questions out of the way, so the ones that get escalated to team members who are knowledgeable on your team, those can be
Yeah.
handled
And it's
properly.
going to keep getting better and better. I mean, our position on AI is like it's really important. It's really critical. It has a role to play. It's going to have an increasingly important role to play, but that nothing's ever going to outdo the human touch. And so that's why we combine the two. We really see AI as a useful tool for speediness, speed to lead, responsiveness, engagement. But we, obviously like balancing that out with the human touch and the more of the nuance that you're referring to in the conversation, Matt.
Yeah, that's good. Where are we with your slides here? I know we've got a number of things we want to showcase from
Yeah,
a
just a
couple
couple, a
examples.
couple more, a couple more slides. And this
Good.
is really just like a visual representation of a few things I've already shared. So like this is a patient that came into a practice at 12:40 a.m. And this is really hard to see on this, but if you email me, I'll send you this deck. You can zoom in, you can read the conversation, you can see the timestamps, all that good stuff. But this is a patient that came in at 12:40 a.m. So that's the first thing I want to show you, that this is very routine, that a lot of your digital leads, again, even if you're only getting 30 to 50, which doesn't sound like a lot, there are consults in there. There are procedures in there. And so if you can respond to every lead like it's your last lead you're ever going to get, you're going to get value there. And then the other thing I want to show here is just how comfortable patients are engaging with the AI. This patient came in at 12:40 a.m., talked for about 10 or 12 minutes with the AI, asked a bunch of questions, quit, picked back up herself, just like she would with a friend the next day around noon or 1 p.m., asked some more questions. And it just shows you how comfortable patients are conversing with really effective AI. And so, this is another, I think, illustration of how you could utilize it in your own practice. Here's an example of joyful persistence. We have so many of these. I mean, I could just give you pages and pages of pages of when you follow up with new leads more than, a handful of times, you're going to grow your practice. This particular lead came in and we followed up for 56 days and booked the consult. So that's text messages, that's emails, that's phone calls, that's voicemails. I mean, it's the whole gamut of communication channels. Finally got a hold of them. They were ready. We booked the LASIK. This particular lead was a LASIK screening. You'll have to email me for these, but there are 3 videos that I'd love to send you. You don't have to get on a meeting with me, nothing. I'll just send you these links and you can watch them and do what you want with them. They're fascinating. So this surprise and delight one, we get mystery shopped all the time by our own customers. And so this one's a fun little video of one of our customers mystery shopping us, and we responded so fast. This happened to be a phone call that she let the cat out of the bag because she was so surprised, and she started laughing and said, "I'm sorry, I have to confess, it's me. You work for me." And so that was a funny one. This second video is Liam showing you 126 days of follow-up. So when we say we follow up with a lead in perpetuity until they unsubscribe or book, we really mean that. So you can check that video out. And then this 24/7 follow-up one is a really fun, it's just a recording of a lead coming in on July 4th weekend. This is for a practice in California. They come in at like midnight on July 4th. This particular clinic has us take their extended hours and weekend calls. So we call them the very next morning and they book a consult. And so it just shows you the combination of immediate responsiveness, speed to lead. They engaged the AI, and then they answered the phone call the very first thing the next morning and booked a consult. So when you use those things, you typically, bear some fruit. So send me an email or a LinkedIn message if you want to see those videos, and I'm more than happy to share them with you. And again, you do not have to have a meeting with me. I'll just send them to you.
I love it. I thought for surprising delight you were going to say practice called me. They'd already had surgery, but we booked them again.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, we haven't
that's
done
how
that
good.
yet. Yeah,
No, but I
haven't
mean,
done that yet.
these are good examples, and I've seen these before. They're worth sharing, and I like what you said at the onset, Cade, which is that if you can do this yourself, then certainly do it. There's others who have been on this forum on Thursdays that the we, especially where I grew up in running a practice, I always believed I could do it better myself. And
Sure.
and sometimes we actually did. And many times we never got around to it because of
Sure.
the other things that we were trying to be excellent at, and we were. But that there's just only so much time to be a subject matter expert uh,
Yeah.
in
And,
everything.
and I'm dead serious. If someone has a desire to implement this on their own and want to just, hear our best practices and what we see work and not work, I'm more than happy to share it. What we do is not necessarily like a secret. These are things that everyone can do. I think the difference is we've built phenomenal technology, and we iterate, we move very fast, we're very quick, and so we're typically able to do better than a practice can. But I'm always happy to show you our quote secrets, and you can leverage that information to improve your consults and grow your surgery volume.
Well, it also makes you, because I know you well, you wake up in the morning feeling like, man, now we got to do even better because everybody
Yeah.
knows, how we're doing
Right.
it. So that's
Right.
the kind of hair on fire that I know that you have, and I share that as well. Well, team, we want to open up for questions with anybody from the who are attendees. I know that you do this not only in the LASIK and refractive world, Kate, but you also do it um, in the refractive lens exchange world. A lot of people are marketing vision correction in general, not just LASIK.
Mhm.
And so maybe share while people are getting the guts to unmute and ask a question, maybe share some examples of practices that are using you primarily for implant work.
Actually, I would say 95% of our practice have us take all of their vision correction and cataract leads, all of them.
Okay, got it.
It's actually it's actually a kind of a misconception of Boost that we only do LASIK leads,
Mm,
and so I would say the caveats are a handful of practices will have us like just do a certain segment of lead, like they just want us to take their meta leads, or they want their team to take self test leads because they're high intent, and we take social media and PPC leads or whatever. But
mhm.
the vast majority of our practices are offering, as you all know, multiple vision correction procedures and premium cataracts, and so we're following up with all those leads, and I think everybody who works at a practice here would see all leads really important, regardless of what procedure they're interested in, and so I would treat every lead, like I said earlier, as the last lead you're ever going to get.
The thing that it makes me think of, recently I've become very interested in the interventional glaucoma space and also the therapeutic cornea space, especially as it relates to cross-linking. Our center did a lot of those things, a lot of MIGS trials, now procedural pharmaceuticals. And one of the drums that I've been beating in some other webinars is how we should be treating these patients like we treated our LASIK leads back in the golden years, where we would not let their inquiry fall through the cracks for even more urgent reasons than just revenue, but because they suffer from a sight stealing disease state if it progresses longer. So, I know we've said the words a ton of times, but I can see joyful persistence being so important in those categories, in even more powerful and meaningful ways. Anybody have any questions? Melissa from Dell, can I challenge you or
I accept that challenge, Matt
okay,
Jensen.
good.
I
So
don't,
long as your question is for Matt, Melissa, and not me.
I don't really know that I have any questions. I was jumping in here because I love picking up pearls of wisdom from all of these amazing webinars. And, I guess to piggyback off of what Matt said, my practice actually uses Boost for our everything for all of our leads. And I love what they do with that. And it's exactly what you said, Matt, with regard to interventional glaucoma and these therapeutic corneal patients, keratoconic patients who are, looking for cross-linking. We need to be pursuing those leads just in the same way that we're pursuing all of these refractive leads. And once you understand that, it shifts everything in your practice. And so we even use Boost actually to contact all of the patients that are referred into us. We have our referral sources because frankly, every lead you have should be treated as a VIP patient. And so I'm a big fan of Boost, big fan of Kade. So just wanted to
Yeah.
jump in and say that.
I love that. And Cade, it's funny. In the last few months, I've had the opportunity and just the blessing of going back into Vance Thompson Vision and doing some of our huddles again, like the old days. And they're still doing them. But to be invited back is such a nice compliment that I take very seriously. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is all this fuss that we do now for these elective patients. But now that we talked about, what's the application for therapeutic patients, but also what's our answer for how we treat our own team? I mean, I can see you having an application someday for applicants, right? How do we soft touch our applicants to just help them wonder, like, what is this place that's responding to me way more than any other? I mean, lead follow up for people who ask for a job, absolutely, to set the standard on how we want them to treat our patients. So I
Yeah.
just think that your responsiveness and your commitment to be very quick to pick up the phone covers a lot of ground, and we can learn a lot from it. Did anybody else have any questions? And maybe while they're coming up with it, I'm going to have you put that last slide back up. Um,
Yes, sir.
Cade, just because I want to reference the upcoming session that we're going to be having in Chicago. The business of refractive cataract surgery, a lot of practices use this as a jumping off point to really dig deep into their refractive cataract program. All kinds of faculty are coming. They come, they share their forms, they share their literature that they send patients. There's role playing as far as taking, questions and objections, both from an administrator standpoint and a doctor standpoint. They want you to come in twos, a doctor and a practice leader. So the doctor knows how to go into surgery and deliver on the promise and how to use things like verbal anesthesia, to talk the patient through where they are in their visual journey. But then the practice administrator or the practice leader, it could be a tech or whoever is going to help launch this program, are the ones who really turn around and they marshal the team. You really have to have the one-two punch to implement any new technology. And by the way, that weekend is a nice backdrop. If you're thinking about implementing anything in your practice, the fundamentals that will go through that weekend are the basic mechanics of how you can implement really anything. And so you're invited to come to that. It's put on by ASOA and Askers. I know some of our past talent on this webinar will be in attendance, as well as a lot of you have already registered. The other thing I'll just mention is next week we're going to be talking about interventional glaucoma and how a practice implemented that. We'll have Arsen Gregorian from Harvard Eye in Southern California joining us to talk about their implementation of laser treatments and procedural pharmaceutical and MIGS, but how they've been able to turn it into a business model where they actually have run it almost like they do a laser program. There's special visits set up. There's pre-authorization set up that's done way before the patient comes in. I think you'll all want to join for that if you've considered how to make the therapeutic side of your program as meaningful and profitable as your refractive side of your program. So you'll see promotions starting very soon on that as well. Well, if you've got another question, if anybody from the group does, feel free to unmute and ask now. If not, I want to reference Cade's contact information here. If I were you, I'd reach out to him to get those videos um, um, and notes and this deck. If nothing else, share it with your phone team. It will give them a sense of urgency with how they handle your leads, at least in the current state. Kate, I want to thank you for making some time. I mean, you don't get anything out of this, and it's 40 minutes out of your busy day. talking to friends of mine, friends of ours about what you're working on and how it's good for the practice. So thanks for joining us, and team, keep coming back. We're going to come up with new topics every week to help implement new technologies um, like IG, like corneal cross-linking, like refractive IOLs and cataract surgery, and like vision correction surgery using lasers, and whatever's to come in the future. So thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your day. It's almost 11 o'clock p.m. in Denmark, so I'm going to hit the hay.
Thanks, everybody. It's nice being with you. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you.
Yep. See you.